I know that probably most, if not all of you, are familiar with the beloved actor and our co-founder, Michael J. Fox, but you may be less familiar with his foundation, so I just wanted to take a moment to give you a brief overview of the Michael J. Fox Foundation. The foundation was founded in the year 2000 with a mission to cure Parkinson's disease in our lifetime, and that mission has never changed. So what we do is we fundraise and we aggressively fund a global research agenda focused on finding a cure for Parkinson's disease. And since inception, our cost basis has never changed. So 89 cents of every dollar goes toward the activity of finding a cure through research. And that has remained consistent even as we've grown. We just recently became a mid-sized company, moving from 100 employees to, I think, 140 in West Midtown. So we're making a lot of progress in recent years, and we're very excited about that. So today, because we're talking about finding a cure and the fact that fundraising really speeds the cure, we're going to focus on how we're leveraging donor data to help us on two ends of our fundraising spectrum. We have a bifurcated audience, meaning that 10% of our donors contribute 90% of our revenue, and vice versa. So on one hand, or one side of the spectrum, we're really looking at how we can optimize and scale our low-touch, high-scale digital marketing efforts to reach all of the donors that we need to reach, perhaps mostly digitally. And then on the other end of the spectrum, we're looking at how we can use donor data to optimize our high-touch, personal outreach, relationship-building exercises around major donors. So we're really looking at the entire field and sort of saying, how can we do this in a way that makes sense and is efficient? I should mention here that we are doing all of this in the context of working in a very niche market. And what do I mean by that? What I mean is that we estimate that only 1 to 2 million people in the US population have Parkinson's disease. And therefore, we consider our target market to be roughly around 4 to 5 million people in the US, which includes a friends and family circle of 3 to 4 people around that one PD patient. That is a tiny, tiny market in relative terms compared to what everyone here probably works with. And so we need to scale within the context of finding a very niche market. And it's one of the most difficult marketing challenges I've ever taken on. I want to also note that even though we're only talking about donor data today, it's very important that we be scaling to reach this target population, because in doing so, we can help pull in more people who are qualified for clinical trials, and therefore we can speed a cure to Parkinson's in that way. So yes, we do need people's dollars, but we also need relevant people to participate in clinical trials so we can find a cure. And we can develop statistically significant results from those trials, which largely go unpopulated historically. So it's not just about the dollars, but we'll be talking about the dollars. Keep in mind there's also that statistically significant impact of reaching more people who can help us find a cure. So today we're going to talk about how we're leveraging donor data for insights into how we actually operationalize and manage our business on the fundraising and marketing sides. And let's just jump right in.
Great. Okay, so to Emily's point, our approach to donor management and using donor data is truly grounded in analytics and statistics. And this is actually particularly timely for the foundation as we're seeing exponential growth in our donor activity. So to that end, in order to position ourselves and manage our own expectations around donors, we want to understand more about giving behavior. Particularly, will certain donors return? How much will they give? How often will they give? So in order to answer these questions in an objective manner, we turn to a family of customer-based probability models, and also a quick shout out to Pete Fader for said models and academic papers around them that have personally helped me actually get all of this up and running. So we turn to these probability models to actually find an objective way of seeking answers in all of these different areas. So even though there are 4 main outputs from these models, today at least I'd like to focus on the probability of donors returning. So let's set the stage for our story by looking at everything that we know or can deduce about a donor. So we know that some of them return, others make one-time gifts. We also know if someone is working with a relationship manager at the foundation, their geography, if they've participated in any patient advocacy events, maybe they've received emails from us, and maybe they've even donated, and then we can track the recency and frequency of their giving behavior. But on top of all of this, there's a lot of factors that we're just not able to measure, and there's an enormous amount of just randomness around this entire situation that, quite frankly, is just hard to quantify. So looking at our entire landscape of donor knowledge, where should we really start in answering some of the questions I posed earlier? What will make a donor return? How likely are they to stick around? And where do we start with all of this? So we can flip a coin. Heads they stay, tails they leave. We can we can review all of this information about donors, one by one, using our emotions and just getting like a gut check on what we think about a person. But quite frankly, these are not very sustainable, especially not when you're looking at double-digit growth. So in the past, at least, we've taken a rules-based approach where we've set certain criteria and thresholds for trying to get a sense of what our donor behavior looks like. So this is just an example that I wanted to walk you guys through. So we split our donors into 4 different categories. The categories are set by donation level. And so for instance, last year, people who fell into category 2 then returned and were redistributed into these 4 categories. You can see that most folks just fall into the same group, and we don't really see a lot of upward movement or even a lot of downward movement. So from an analytical perspective, at least this sets some sort of way to frame donor behavior, and at least we're moving in that direction. From a cultural standpoint, this type of analysis is what folks are really accustomed to seeing. And so as we were working towards any sort of predictive solution or really just taking another look at advanced analytics, recreating something like this using one of our BI platforms in a very dynamic and visual way has been a really good method in just acclimating our internal stakeholders to seeing data, to getting all of this information in a really accessible, digestible manner. And so it's really been an amazing stepping stone in moving the organization away from some of these more standard rules-based approaches to a more probabilistic way of thinking.
Luba, I'd love to talk a little bit more about that. You just reminded me that I didn't talk about our business intelligence platform, but just to give some context, before and after attending the Wharton School, I spent 15 years in corporate media management, so this was my first nonprofit role, and I had always been working with data-driven insights, so I was a little surprised to find when I arrived at the foundation about 18 months ago how steep the imbalance was in sort of analytical proclivity across the foundation. So on the research side, we have many PhDs and scientists, and they had spent years with big data doing data mining and predictive analytics in the search to find a cure. There was nearly none of that happening on the business side, which I call the fundraising and marketing pieces. And so we went about changing that, and this is where the sort of advent of analytics came in. We made a case for bringing on statistical skill sets on the business side, and that first hire was Luba, who not only has an MS in marketing statistics, but also a technical background, and is able to work in proper tools and software, for example, R, which was mentioned earlier. And we brought on a business intelligence platform for the first time ever. So instead of kind of doing these sort of time-consuming, heavy labor downloads from the CRM database and manipulating data in Excel and pivoting every time we needed to see something, Luba was able to implement over the course of, I think, a very quick 3 months, the development of the integration of this business intelligence platform. And suddenly, overnight, we were able to have on our desktops and our mobile devices real-time automated reports it was game-changing for senior management. And we actually had a sort of an inverse thing happening where senior management was on board a lot quicker than kind of, the sort of rest of the organization. And so we kind of fed off that, and to the point of this slide, this was an interesting pivot point where Luba was preparing and offering automated real-time data in a form that people were used to seeing as sort of an olive branch to, I think, what is the next slide. So just wanted to give a little context on that.
Yeah, so we got everyone's attention by giving them a slide like this and others that updated hourly. So after actually bringing people to the table, we then suggested that we actually just kind of take a totally different approach to all of this. So instead of asking what makes a donor stay, or based on what all the different attributes that we're collecting about them, we actually instead wanted to reverse that question and figure out what makes them leave and start tracking their drop-off probability. And for this is where we truly turned to that family of customer-based probability models and used all of the rich academic literature and research that's in this space. So again, thank you, made my work a lot easier by doing it for me. So for this, we're actually looking at the most fundamental elements of a donor and donation behavior, which is the frequency and recency of these transactions. And from there, we're able to deduce the drop-off probability for each individual donor. So now we find ourselves in a position where for each person that we're working with, we can give our fundraising and marketing teams information about the likelihood that those constituents will return, which is a very, very different space than where we were at probably a year ago.
A few months ago.
Yeah, even a few months ago. So what's also really nice about using this type of information is that it's probably the best quality of information, I'd say, that we have. It's not self-reported, we track it, it's very reliable, so at least any of the results that are coming out of a model like this, our teams can rest easy that it's actually legitimate information.
Yeah, this illustrates the fact that on your second slide, when you kind of had all the attributes or behaviors that we collect, it's not exactly what we'd love to have or I would love to have as a marketer. It's inconsistently collected, and it's not necessarily a whole picture of how they're interacting with us. So to know that just the dollar value is kind of the one uncontested data point is not necessarily something we're very comfortable with, and this being slightly inconsistent, we are now working on a CRM optimization project where we are completely kind of cleaning up our data structures and our data fields such that the data going into these analyses are more helpful to us, and we're able to rely on something other than just a dollar figure.
Mm-hmm. And so for this model, at least, we're using those two green boxes in the corner while the rest of it is cleaned up. So in terms of where something like this leads us, now we have the drop-off probability, but there are three other areas that we can also begin to address from the same class of models. So these are top of mind for us to look at the expected number of donations for said donors, the likelihood that they'll make these transactions, and then ultimately establish a lifetime value that we can expect from donors, both at the highest level, so for folks that work very closely with relationship managers, more our high-touch segment, and then also how we can adjust any sort of marketing strategy for folks who are on the lower end, more high scale but low touch. So I think there are a variety of ways that we can really start to action these results.
Yeah, and I'll just finish up here. I think to the point around the CRM, I mentioned we were doing a CRM optimization project. One kind of near-term benefit of Luba's work and our business intelligence platform is that we're able to kind of back into underlying errors that exist in the CRM infrastructure. And that has been a secondary benefit of this business intelligence platform, allowing us to sort of pinpoint where the data may be off and going in and making tweaks along the way. So even though we have this 12 to 18-month plan to optimize the CRM and clean up the data, we're still able to make iterative improvements as we go through actually conducting these analyses. I'll also say, and kind of put out there, and maybe people can offer their thoughts on this, is we had some early wins here. We quickly implemented this platform. Luba started turning out a lot of great reporting, and now we really are in the position to make sure we operationalize that through fundraising and marketing. Those are two different clients. I suppose I'm the client of marketing, but we've got a marketing team, and then we've got a development team, and we need to make sure we're actually communicating what this is saying and having them sort of spend their time appropriately or implement tactics appropriately, and that's kind of our next step. I would also say organizationally, we've been working on a hub and spoke model, so we're very lean. We want to spend our marketing dollars properly. We also want to use our resources properly. Luba is beginning a very small analytics team, and the way we've kind of gotten around that is created a hub and spoke model where Luba is training other analysts across the foundation on the business intelligence platform, helping them with some statistical methodology, and really kind of showing them the power of these tools. And that has worked so far to give us a leg into the rest of the foundation. I think moving forward, we've seen such value from this that we're in a place where we can do no more with that model. And we're saying, well, should we just develop a big analytics team? And I think everyone in here knows there's pros and cons to that, right? We sort of think there's some value in having people embedded across the foundation working with Luba and really buying into this. At the same time, we're in a place where we really need to make sure we keep up the momentum. And so we're just really dealing with that cultural change and shift.
Yeah, but a lot of exciting things on the horizon. This is probably the most fun job I've had. So looking forward to where we land with all of this, even in the next few months.